saying DCJ will no longer commission.
Camera's turned off.
Morning, everyone. You can't say good morning back, so I'll just pretend like you're all waving and happy.
Morning. Good morning.
Morning. Oh, we've got a couple of people from my team who can say good morning.
Morning.
Morning. I might give it a couple of minutes. I know there's a fair few people expected to join us, so I'll give it a couple of minutes while we all sit here in ever so slightly awkward silence, but at least in the comfort of your own home or office, rather than a slightly awkward city hall or something. So just pop this on mute for now. I might just give everybody a sec to just get themselves ready. I apologise if you can hear in the background a 9-month-old baby who's getting a little bit protesty about getting in the car for swimming lessons. So sorry about that. I will just give it another couple of minutes. Oh, not a couple of minutes, couple of seconds, and then I will hit go on a record. My team, are you ready to go? If we need to record.
Hey B, it's already set to automatically recording, so you don't need to.
So it's been recording this whole time. We might need to just maybe.
I can delete the start bit.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Layla. I don't think the whole world needs to know about my family's life. Okay, well, let's get started then. I think we've probably got a critical mass of people. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Family Preservation Discussion Paper briefing. For those who don't know me, my name is Brianna Yorgite. I am the Director of Family Preservation and Child Protection in DCJ. I've had the pleasure of being in this post for a couple of years now and have got to know this sector really well, and I'm just so excited about this stage of work that we're at. So thank you very much. Before we get stuck into today's session, I just want to acknowledge that wherever we are joining from Aboriginal land that was never ceded. I'm joining you from Darug country in southwestern Sydney, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Aboriginal colleagues who are on this call, in your teams, and of course the clients and communities that we serve every day in the family preservation space. This is incredibly important work, and we need to remember and put those Aboriginal children and families and communities at the centre of our thoughts. I also just want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you and of course colleagues across DCJ as well for really pulling together and working in this sector. I think the Minister reflected in the foreword of the discussion paper her gratitude for the hard work of everyone, and I just want to extend that as well. A couple of housekeeping things. We are not having any Q&A today or any chat. Can I ask for people to keep their microphones on mute as well? We were trying to have those disabled, but I'm not sure if it's quite worked out. So you'll have the joy of listening to me talk at you for a good period of time. And of course, some colleagues at the end from our peak bodies just plugging some events they're having off the back of this discussion paper. The purpose really is to talk through what the key aspects of what is a very long discussion paper. So you have another mechanism to kind of hear and digest that. And of course, signpost you to how you can input and our next steps on that work. So with that in mind, I've got some information there on those slides, which say where you can access the paper if you haven't done so already, the key dates for submission, which is by the 17th of May, and the mechanisms by which you can provide that input. Our strong preference is for input through the online form that helps us analyse the responses more quickly and more effectively. But of course, if that does not work for you, that is absolutely fine as well. That's why we have those other mechanisms. All right, so I think it's time to get into the substance of the proposals that we outlined in the paper. So the paper is broken up into a few different sections. I want to talk to you a little bit about the purpose and the approach that we have used in that paper, first of all, then talk about part one, which is about doing better for children and families. Part two, which is about services that are responsive to family needs. Part three, a system that continuously improves outcomes. And then parts 4 and 5, and we can deal with those together, which is around the Families Together framework and the Aboriginal Family Preservation framework. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we can wrap up by re-signalling how you can provide feedback and work with your peaks, if that's what you would like to do. So the purpose and approach. We recognise that family preservation has been on a journey since its inception in the kind of early 2000 period, and at different points has had different focuses. We thought it would be really helpful to be very clear on what we believe right now is the objective of family preservation in our system, and ensure that we are all on the same page about this. So we've outlined this in our paper as the primary objective of family preservation is to keep children safe at home with their families and prevent removal and placement in out-of-home care and future contact with the child protection system. Of course, we also recognise that there are wider social benefits for children and families as a result of family preservation, and we work in a complex system with multiple outcomes that we're trying to achieve. But really at the heart of this, given the cohort of children and families, it is about preventing removal and preventing future contact with the system. The next slide just sets out some the point in the commissioning cycle that we are at, and I'm sure you've got this at the front of your mind. We will be looking to begin procurement activity for the next round of family preservation contracts later in the year, so from October. We will need to have new contracts in place by July. Next year. Our current set of contracts all expire at the end of June next year, and then we'll be looking to have a 5-year contract cycle. And that's where we're at the moment. Our discussion paper at the moment, sets out some key questions which we need to settle first, and that we'd like your response on, and also sets out a broader vision on some aspects where we don't need your responses right now, but would like to have an ongoing conversation with you over the next little while, largely from June this year through the entire commissioning cycle. So moving on to part 1, doing better for children and families. I don't think I need to spend too much time talking to you about the importance of family preservation, but we wanted to just make sure that we were all really clear on the context that we are operating and recommissioning family preservation in. So quite fundamentally, this is a significant program and key lever to keep Aboriginal children safe with their families and address overrepresentation in the system. We have a variety of statistics, which I know you are all familiar with, around that overrepresentation. And of course, there have been many recommendations in FIC and Closing the Gap about this work. So we wanted to make sure that we were really clear that that is a key objective, and we're taking the opportunity to use this program as a lever to drive better outcomes for Aboriginal children and families. We are also conscious that family preservation recommissioning is happening in the context of a wider system that is also undergoing change. There are other programs like targeted early intervention and initiatives like Aboriginal-led commissioning, which are happening in parallel to this. And we want to make sure that what we are doing in family preservation is able to be responsive and complementing those reforms as well. And make sure that that was really key part of how we have designed and take this recommissioning work forward. The other aspect that we really wanted to highlight was around how we want to further develop evidence to inform investment in earlier supports. We know that the stronger the evidence base is for something being effective at the outcomes it is trying to achieve, the more likely we are to secure ongoing funding and investment in that service. So it's really important for us that we continue to build our evidence base on the effectiveness of these programs to keep children safe and at home, to keep them out of home care, and to keep them out of contact with the child protection system. So that is a key plank of this as well. Moving on to the next slide, we just wanted to make sure that we were clear. Sorry, I've just got my own slides mixed up now. Really clear on the purpose of the redesign and that evidence point that I discussed, and that we really want to collaborate with the sector, both in DCJ and the service delivery sector, NGOs and ACOs, to understand these challenges and opportunities. So we have made sure that we are thinking about this with you at the heart and using evidence to drive the agenda going forward. Moving on to the next slide, with that in mind, we wanted to make sure that we were really clear on the principles which have informed this design. And we had set out 8 principles in the paper. The first, that our design will be evidence-based, as I have said before, and embeds principles around Indigenous data sovereignty and data governance, that it is person-centred and looks to the experience, strengths and needs of families, so to drive the system response rather than the other way around, and making sure that families can exercise agency over what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve it. That our system is transparent, fair and accountable, that families have full and consistent and accurate information about all aspects of service delivery at their point in their journey, and they're aware of their rights and are comfortable and safe to express concerns for a fair resolution, and acknowledging that this is particularly important for Aboriginal families who might also seek to engage community accountability mechanisms. Our fourth principle is around culturally safe and responsive. And this is, of course, recognising that our families all come from diverse cultural backgrounds, and services have to be safe and respectful and inclusive and responsive to those differences and needs. And for Aboriginal families is, again, particularly important. It means prioritising voice and experience and community in decision making. The fifth principle is around the system being simple and easy to understand. We're conscious that government and service systems are often complicated, and we want to make sure that things are as simple as possible and as navigatable as possible for our families. The 6 is around collaboration with all stakeholders, and we recognise again that this is a complex system with multiple stakeholders with different roles and responsibilities, and we want to make sure that the mechanisms are there to incentivise all stakeholders collaborating to achieve the outcomes that we are striving for families, children and families, children and community. The 7th is around directive, supportive and innovative. And this is really around striking the right balance between giving direction and rules and guardrails, as well as freedom and room for innovation and creativity and professional judgment. And we've been very conscious about trying to strike that balance throughout the design. For ACCOs, this is driven by self-determination and creating space for that to happen. And the last is around value for money. This is obviously public money that is being used for this purpose, and we need to make sure that we are spending that money in a way that is efficient and effective and achieves the outcomes for children in the best way possible. So with that in mind, we can go on to talk about the service system and how that is going to be responsive to family needs. The next slide sets out an infographic which we have designed to show what we want the program suite to look like over the next recommissioning cycle and potentially beyond. And here we highlight that we will be retaining FFTCW, MSTCAN. Both of those programs have strong evidence. And we will be moving to have 2 frameworks, Aboriginal Family Preservation Framework and Families Together. And we will go on to talk about exactly what those frameworks mean later on in this session. We just have a small asterisk here that NSW is a community-led and developed and delivered model for families in the Illawarra-Shoalhaven area. And so we will be continuing commissioning of that service. Also to note that Aboriginal Family Preservation is proposed to be delivered by ACCOs only, and that follows a series of conversations and decisions that have been had under that work over the last 2 years. We want to note that while we're no longer commissioning programs, including Brighter Futures, Youth Hope Resilient Families, IFBS, IFP and PSPFP, the framework approach under Families Together and Aboriginal Family Preservation allows the best of these models to be brought to the fore and to give practitioners and organisations the space to creatively apply the best features of those models. So moving on to the next slide, this sets out our ideal service offering across all districts, which effectively shows a desire to have most of these programs and frameworks available in all districts across New South Wales. With some minor exceptions, but we will be looking to have a more consistent service offering for families across New South Wales, noting that that has been quite a patchwork in the past. So really trying to drive a more consistent approach. The next slide sets out what is at the heart, one key element of our design, and that's about designing services which are suitable and responsive and effective for families. And there are 2 key elements of this. One is around eligibility and suitability to start with. So we wanted to really streamline and clarify families who are eligible for family preservation. Previously, this has looked quite different for different programs. We are proposing that a family is eligible for family preservation if they have a child or young person in the home who is 0 to 17 and DCJ or a reporter suspects they are at risk of significant harm. And the definition of suspecting or determining that they are at risk of significant harm follows the definition in section 23 of the Care Act. And we thought it was really important to anchor this cohort on those provisions in the Care Act. We want to move to a situation, so you will appreciate that is a very broad cohort of families. We want to move to a position where we are talking about whether a family is suitable for family preservation or not. So there were a range of considerations, which you will all know implicitly, that will make a family more or less suitable for family preservation in general and specific family preservation models. And we've tried to itemise those in the discussion paper, and they are set out on the slide here. And this is talking about a family's characteristics and needs, their motivation for wanting a service, their readiness for change, cultural needs, their own preferences, the service provider, and of course the availability. We want to make sure that all of those things that are driving decisions at the moment for matching families to family preservation are more deliberately considered and consistently applied. We also wanted to make sure that in our determining our eligibility and suitability, we were really clear on the families and the concerns that and challenges that some of these families have, and to make sure that we are clear that they can have a service. So the families in the Roche cohort are very likely to have mental health, drug and alcohol, and domestic and family violence, or a combination of these risk factors in their home. Our expectation and desire is that family preservation will be able to respond to these needs as a standard rule. We do not want these families precluded from a service. Of course, we recognise that there may be some circumstances where some families in this eligibility cohort are not suitable and should not be offered and receive a family preservation service, but we want to make sure that that is a cohort that is as small as possible. Moving on to the next slide, we are obviously all aware that family preservation is a ration service, and we need to take deliberate steps to make sure that the right families are receiving the services that are available. We are proposing to have three priority groups. The first is around those who are allocated from a DCJ allocated case referral. So this is where a DCJ caseworker is actively working with the family or has assessed the family and assessed the child to be at Roche and makes a referral to family preservation. So these are children who are already in contact with the child protection system and have been assessed and allocated. The second priority is a referral from triage. So that is the cohort where children have been reported at Roche, and that has made its way through the helpline to the triage team in the district. And that a referral can be made from the triage point without it necessarily being allocated to a caseworker for further child protection work. And of course, priority 3, which is around community referrals. And this is these referrals are proposed to come from mandatory reporters only, who are comfortable and recognise the definition of Roche that we are tying to eligibility and can make that referral. Our proposed split across these three buckets are 60%, 30% and 10%. The next slide talks about best referral processes and practice. So we recognise that this can be challenging, and we want to make sure we're really clear on what good referral practice looks like, given those different referral and intake pathways and proportions. So as mentioned, for community referrals, they only need to be done by mandatory reporters. This is a mechanism which is designed to be responsive to a family's needs and getting them quicker access to family preservation and needing to rely on going through the child protection system for that. A Roche report, given the eligibility, the Roche report has to be made in parallel to that referral, because that is the requirements under the Act for mandatory reporting. We would like community referrals to talk openly with the family about their concerns and let them know that they suspect the child is at Roche and they think that the family would benefit from working with a family preservation service. The referrer should be considering the family's needs and goals to determine their suitability and obtain agreement from the family before making the referral. At triage, we want to make sure that triage officers who are making those referrals are contacting the family to let them know that the Roche report has been made, and that they are openly and clearly discussing the concerns that have been raised, and that the family knows their rights and the options available to them, and they consider the family's needs, characteristics and goals to determine their suitability for family preservation. We are asking that the referring officer obtains agreement from the family before making that referral, and that the referral is made using a universal referral form, which again we may be updating or will likely need to update. But this is to ensure that the service provider is receiving consistent information. The third category around allocating off a open case, we are proposing some changes here. Rather than referring off the back of a safety and risk assessment, we are proposing that the DCJ caseworker develops a family action plan for change with the family, and in part of the development of that family action plan for change, they discuss and agree the goals for the family and how family preservation may or may not support the achievement of those goals. With the agreement to the family action plan for change, the caseworker can then make the referral to family preservation using the URF. This is a complicated proposal, and we recognise that there are considerable operational pressures that DCJ caseworkers are under to see the high volumes of children who are reported at Roche, and to make sure that they're getting a face-to-face assessment, and recognise that this particular change may put resourcing pressures on those CSCs. So we want to just make sure we have real engagement in this part of the discussion paper as well, to work through what the best mechanism is for ensuring a purposeful referral where all parties, that is the family, DCJ and the service provider, are working from the same page for the family. We're also introducing two new decline reasons. One is for insufficient information and the other is unsuitability for the service. We're certainly hoping that these decline reasons are not utilised or need to be utilised too heavily. We hope that our processes and the universal referral form means that information is fully provided at the point of referral, and that if not, there is an open discussion that between the referrer and the provider to ensure that information is obtained so the family can have the best opportunity to receive a service, but recognise that sometimes that doesn't happen, and there needs to be a reason to decline a referral for that purpose. We are also proposing for unsuitability, really clearly linking that to how we are going to define suitability for families going forward, and recognising that not everyone will be suitable for a service, and there needs to be a mechanism to decline for that purpose. Moving on to the next slide, we want to make sure that family engagement in the service recognises contextual factors and a family's capacity and readiness for change that are critical for that family to achieve outcomes. So the key aspect we are proposing here is that for cases that are referred off a DCJ allocated case, so this is not community referrals and this is not triage, this is only for an allocated case, that DCJ keeps that case open for a certain period of time while that referral is being made and the service provider is engaging the family. This period allows, our expectation of DCJ would be to share any information that is necessary with the service provider to support that initial engagement period, and secondly, to receive and respond to any other mandatory reports being made. We know that this particular early period with the family is crucial, and there's a lot of reporting and activity that can happen during this period, and we want to make sure that that information flows between parties as quickly and proportionately as possible. We are proposing that this period is up to 3 months, and that that means that if a family has engaged with the service within the 3-month period, the service provider can notify DCJ and DCJ may close that case and move on. But at the 3-month mark, if the service provider does not feel that that engagement has really taken place and that it is not likely that the family will be able to successfully engage with the service, that they notify a DCJ of that, and next steps can be considered. So it is up to 3 months rather than necessarily holding the case open for 3 months. We just wanted to make sure that in that period, there are a range of things that the service provider is able to do. So that's making sure that they can identify any additional indicators of risk that may not have been identified by DCJ, or that they come to learn and understand by working really closely with the family, that they're making sure that the goals identified in the Family Action Plan for Change are achievable through the delivery of family preservation services, and the family can achieve those goals, that the provider is able to consistently engage with the family's suitability for the model and service, and have a deeper understanding of that match and the family's readiness for change. And also in this period, apply other assessment tools that may be helpful for understanding these things. For example, we have flagged in the paper the use of the proposed Domestic and Family Violence Common Risk Assessment Framework as a tool that may be used across the sector. So moving on to 18, we're really conscious that one of the issues that has been identified is in the sector by DCJ and providers has been around whose responsibility it is to manage risk. And by that we mean the risk to a child during service delivery. And we really wanted to go back to the Care Act and be clear about what we mean by risk and who owns it. So we've got some quite meaty sections in the paper about this, but this is quite important. DCJ is the agency responsible for exercising the powers and duties under the Care Act to determine whether a child is at ROSH and whether they are in need and care of protection. These powers do not sit with service providers and have not been delegated to them. That is a responsibility that retains with DCJ. Despite this, we know that family preservation providers who are working with families will have unique insights into the ongoing risk of the child in the manner in which you're working with them. So we need to make sure that we are clear that as a family preservation provider, you are not responsible for determining whether a child is at ROSH or whether they are in need of care and protection. That is the ambit of DCJ, but there needs to be a mechanism for you to be able to share information and report risk back to the department. So the next slide outlines our proposed approach to doing this. And this looks different for whether this is an allocated case with a case open with DCJ, or whether the case is closed. If the case is open, so for example, I just discussed off an allocated case, the case may be open for 3 months. The service provider can inform DCJ, the DCJ caseworker or the triage team or DCJ in general, and we can work through what those risks are, of any risk to the child that changes or escalates during that period. So so whether those concerns are materially different from those that were previously understood at the point of referral. And in sharing that information back with DCJ, the provider will be discharging their responsibilities to mandatory report risk under the Care Act. They will not need to report to the helpline. Where there is not an open case, so if a referral is off triage or is a community referral, or after a case closure, the service provider needs to report any ongoing or emerging suspicion that the child is at ROSH to the helpline. This might include whether they have disengaged from service provision and you believe that that places the child at risk of significant harm. That will then go through the normal kind of screening and assessment processes at DCJ. We are conscious that once that report gets to the triage team in the district, that they may, and we would encourage them to pick up the phone to the service provider who made that report so we can join up accordingly. So we just want to make sure that those procedures are really clear for people, because we know that this is often a tricky space for people to navigate. That brings us to the close of that particular section of the paper. So I move on to part 3, which is much more about a systems rather than the family's literal experience of the service. This part of the paper is obviously hugely important, but is not as urgent to resolve. And this is where I kind of signalled earlier that we want to work with you over the coming months and years to work this through to make sure that the system consistently and continually improves outcomes over the commissioning cycle. So this slide sets out our ambition to have a collaborative and supporting workforce. We set out a few different things that or areas where we have ambition and would like to take forward with you. So firstly is around clarifying roles and responsibilities between different people in the system. So that includes people within DCJ and within service providers and at different levels. So whether that's at the program level, the contract level, the service provision level, etc. And we want to make sure that those roles and responsibilities are really clear and known and consistently applied across the state. We're also really keen to introduce communities of practice, recognising that there is a huge wealth of expertise and energy in our sector that can be utilised to share best practice and drive that continuous improvement. We've proposed a number of different communities of practice, including one around the Families Together framework, one around the Aboriginal Family Preservation framework, one around data and evidence, another around professional practice, and one around system influencing. We recognise that communities of practice are best when they are also somewhat organic and led by the community. So these are just some ideas about how we can structure our work and give purpose and drive a common agenda. We also want to make sure that the sector is able to attract and retain talent and recognise that this is a challenging environment for employees and employers. And there are a number of things that we have tried to address at a system level to support employers on that front, and they've been itemised in that paper. And the last aspect in this collaboration and supporting workforce piece is around skills, needs and priorities. And we're really clear that moving to this vision of service delivery means that we need to have a concerted effort around skills development for people and provide practitioners in different parts of the system the opportunity to learn and share best practice and get on the front foot and have consistent ways of working. And we're conscious that for some providers, the change of eligibility and client group also means developing a set of new skills and tools. We want to work with the sector to clarify what those needs are, how those opportunities can be available, how they should be delivered, and just make sure that that is an offering that is continuously improving as well. The next slide sets out a vision around using data and evidence-led services. We've mentioned this earlier in the paper, but we're really keen to ensure that we are building evidence as we go, and that quite fundamentally includes improving our program data capture and our quality. We have made significant steps in the past couple of years around introducing a minimum data set and introducing InfoShare. We will be building on this to build even greater data sets that can be relied on to understand performance as we go and improve that. We also want to make sure that the data just doesn't sit there unused, and that all people in the system, or as is relevant to their role, have the analytical capability and confidence to engage with that data and evidence, and that there needs to be tools and products that can support staff to practice and make decisions in more data and evidence-led ways. So we want to explore that and potentially use the community of practice to drive that. We want to make sure we're analysing and evaluating what doesn't work. This is quite fundamental. The whole point of us being here is to deliver outcomes for families, and we need to make sure that we are doing that. And of course, recognising that we need to apply Indigenous data sovereignty and Indigenous data governance really deliberately and purposefully as we recommission and implement our data approach. approaches. The next slide is the last one for this section and just sets out our intention and ambition around how we manage change through the sector. So we have set out a what I believe is quite a big ambition for change and moving forward, and we want to make sure that that change is managed in the right way possible. So firstly, making sure that we have governance structures that support that at a system level. So being really clear across all of the programs, models, frameworks that are developed across New South Wales, that there is a grip around what needs to happen when to realise this vision and this change. That secondly, we have a clear and accurate delivery plan to do that. We have milestones and deliverables and are clear around the activities and resourcing assumptions that will achieve that. The third is around active and meaningful risk management. We know, as I floated earlier, that this change will be happening in the context of wider changes in the service system, and we need to be alive to the risks that could undermine our ability to achieve this ambition, and be honest and clear-eyed about how to engage with that and manage that as a collective. And that kind of goes to the fourth point there as well. We need to be really clear about who needs to pull together to manage some of these risks to make sure that the services can be improved for children and families. The next part of the paper talks about the frameworks. So this is the Aboriginal Family Preservation Framework and sorry, I'm just following the slides. We're at the framework slides and the Families Together framework. So we're just past this slide. Sorry, Layla. Beyond this. Yeah, fantastic. So we've decided to adopt a frameworks approach to commissioning Aboriginal family preservation and families together. This is novel for New South Wales. We had previously commissioned very specific models of family preservation. A framework approach is slightly different. And we have adopted this approach, or proposing this approach, so we can strike the balance between giving direction and some rigour to model of service delivery, but with a lot more flexibility around how practitioners and how providers can deliver that using evidence and using their expertise. And this is to ensure that families can receive a responsive and effective service from a single service provider, rather than having to step up or step down through different levels of intensity or service provision, as I think has been commonly referred to across the sector. So the core components approach is really about identifying a number of fixed elements, which are evidence informed in the literature, that then have a number of activities that sit underneath them. Some of those will be mandatory. Most of them will be at the discretion of the service provider. And this really allows us to understand from a commissioning point of view which things are working and which things aren't working at any given time. We've gone through a process which is outlined in the paper of how we've arrived at the core components that we are proposing, but this has largely involved scanning extensive amount of evidence and engaging, including with ACCOs engaging service providers around that. We want to make sure providers can innovate and build their own model, and there are a range of considerations they will want to take into account. These will all look different for different providers. And that's the strengths, needs and characteristics of their community, the evidence of what works in their community, the strengths of the practitioners in their organisation, the wider community and the service system, and their ability to kind of take all those factors and turn that into something that is meaningful for the clients and the community that they're working in. We will be commissioning or proposing to commission in such a way that allows a provider to determine their own team structure within a given price point and determine how to apportion hours for families over the service period. That is the intensity. And I'll talk a little bit about hours and duration in a minute. And to decide what activities will work for which children and which families, and to have discretion and judgment over that as well. The next slide sets out the Families Together framework, and we have a lovely infographic there, which is sets out the 5 core components, and these are around engagement, case management, family and parent support, therapeutic support and healing, and child-focused support. So those 5 things are the core components, and they will be required to be delivered by service providers. The eligibility and suitability, as set out before, will apply. So that's children at ROSH and suitability as we need to work through. This proposed service duration is 12 months for families, and the allocated hours to family. On average, we are suggesting or proposing to commission 200 service hours. That is no less than 150 and no more than 250. So recognition that there needs to be flex, because not all families will need that many hours and some may need more, but on average, that is what we're expecting. And we'll want to work through from the response to the paper, how those hours, so how the 200 hours or slightly more, slightly less, are split across different functions, including face-to-face delivery, case planning, etc. So we really want to understand from you what that service offering can look like. And we need to obviously address brokerage and a consistent approach to brokerage across our programs. But this is really about us as a commissioner being clear about what we need and want for families. So a 12-month service on average with 200 hours. But that 200 hours can be spent in very different ways across that 12-month period. So you may want to have an intensive period of service delivery in that engagement period, and that may taper off towards the end. We recognise that families may have also periods that slightly destabilise them through the 12-month period where you might need to do more intensive work and then taper that off again. So that just really gives you the flexibility to do that in a non-standardised way that can wrap around a family. For Aboriginal family preservation, I can go on shortly to talk about the core components approach to that, but just to take a little step back and recognise the journey that we've been on here, that this has been developed in partnership with ABSEC and in consultation and co-design with ACOs and in consultation with community as well. This has been on a journey since May 22. I won't kind of repeat what is covered in the discussion paper and this infographic, but largely this has been based on the information that has been picked up through the lesson and learn workshops, and that paper has subsequently been published through conversations and discussions through the Aboriginal Family Preservation Steering Committee, and since then, a number of workshops that have been had with current ACO service providers around the core components. The next slide sets out where the key objectives that had been identified for Aboriginal family preservation. The first of those is really around keeping children safe at home with their families, connected to culture, community and country. To create a shift in the system towards family preservation as a best practice intervention and family support. To ensure that the framework is culturally informed and to achieve better quality of service delivery and closing the gap. To improve outcome to drive closing the gap priorities. To achieve self-determination and to drive empowerment for providers to design, develop and deliver their own models, and to ensure that collective and varied Aboriginal voices are driving and determining systems of data in line with Indigenous data sovereignty and Indigenous data governance principles. So with that background, we arrive at applying a core components approach again. We have set out the proposed 5 core components that have been largely supported through the consultation so far. There is an outstanding question of whether there needs to be a 6th core component for Aboriginal family preservation, and we will leave that with the ACO sector to engage with. Eligibility and suitability is as kind of outlined above, proposed outlined above in the paper. The service duration, we will want ACOs and to engage on what they believe the right service duration is. As mentioned, for Families Together, we are proposing 12 months. It could be 12 months here, it may be more, it may be less. The hours allocated and split of hours across function, so it could be 200 hours, it could be more, it could be less, and of course brokerage. Importantly, in both Aboriginal family preservation and Families Together, we need to recognise that, of course, the greater hours allocated to an individual family means less hours available to a family who is not receiving a service. So this is a finite resource, and we need to strike the right balance between the number of families who are receiving a service and the overall number of hours spent with them. And we need to keep an eye to what is necessary to achieve the outcomes of reduced entries into care and reduced contact with the child protection system when trying to strike that balance. So those are the two frameworks. There are a number of questions in the paper about those, and we really encourage people to lean into those. The questions in the discussion paper for the Aboriginal Family Preservation Framework are for ACOs only, given that AFP will be delivered by ACOs only. Just moving on to then the last few sections. So that kind of draws a line under the content of the paper. I do encourage you to actually read it though, to make sure that you haven't got lost in my verbal words on that, and you can go back to the words on the paper. But just to flag that the peaks are looking to really to support this. And if we ping on to the next slide, I might hand over to Lauren, who I know is not particularly well, but would like to just plug some of the work that FAMs will be doing with their members. Are you there, Lauren?
I am. Thank you so much, Brianna. And yeah, apologies. We've got a bit of a sick family over here, but I'm here and ready to, be with you all this morning. Thanks so much, Brianna. That was really helpful to have that kind of spoken to. For those who don't yet know me, my name is Lauren Stracey and I'm the Sector Engagement Manager here at FAMS. So we've got a couple of different things. So first of all, we've got the Family Preservation Sector Network, which if you haven't been part of it to date, I'd really encourage you to jump online and connect with us there. And one of the projects that we're going to be doing next week is going to be our FAMS sector response to the discussion paper. So there's two ways you can connect with me to be part of that process. You can either just email me directly, where the email address is just up there, lauren@fams.asn.au, or you can scan the QR code, which will take you to our online survey where you can just pop all your details in. And either way, you can connect with us either just for next Monday's session, or you can connect with us more broadly for our sector network. So our session next week will be Monday, the 15th of April, 11 till 12:30. And what we're going to be doing there is really kind of unpacking as a group what are kind of the things that we're really wanting to highlight and raise up that we think are going to be making meaningful change in terms of this redesign, but also any kind of concerns or anything that may, from a practice perspective, indicate, a gap or an area to kind of reconsider as well. So please do join us. It would be wonderful to have as many people from the sector as possible. And if there's anything else that you have in terms of questions, concerns, or just things that you want us to talk through, please don't hesitate to get in touch. I'm always keen to have a chat, although I might not be available till next week. Otherwise, look forward to seeing most of you on Monday. Thanks so much, Brianna.
No probs. Thank you so much, Lauren, and for your hard work and enduring through illness. It's not fun. So the next person I just want to hand over to is Carolyn. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Brianna. Can you hear me?
Yes, gotcha.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate the detail that's gone into this presentation, and it's helped to clarify a few things. So do appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm Carolyn Thompson. I'm the Director of Family Preservation and Safety at ACWA. And ACWA is going to be, yes, holding some, you know, an online sort of consultation and engagement session next week. That's 10:30 to 12:30 next Tuesday. Invitations have gone out to that, but if you haven't received an invitation or and would like one, please get in touch with me via that email address, and I'll happily send it over. And we're you know, going to be talking and thinking deeply about the, you know, the major reform proposals, and getting into some of the detail in that session. So I do encourage everybody to come along. We're also asking for some written input from our member agencies, just so that we can really incorporate that into a joint submission on the paper. So if you have any of those written inputs, also email me at that address. And yeah, we're very much looking forward to engaging, you know, constructively in this process. So I should also mention that Lauren and I have been collaborating, and so we'll attend each other's sessions so that we can get the fullest understanding of perspectives across the sector.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And congratulations on staying well, because I'm about to hand over to Jade, who also isn't well. Jade, are you there?
Yeah,
No?
thanks, Brianna.
Oh, you are.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, hi everybody. I'm pretty sure most people would know me by now. Usually have been at these things, but I'm Jade Lane, Family Preservation Manager for ABSEC. So at the moment, we're trying to reach out individually to ACCOs to provide support, so we can come onto country, come over and be in your own setting to help you provide a response. And there's also going to be a bit of a forum next week in Dubbo. So we've sent out all the details to ACCOs. If you haven't received those, please just reach out and get in touch with me. Hoping that everyone can hear me.
Yeah, you're good.
Yep. Everyone's frozen on my screen. Yeah, so my details, I think, should be sent out in the follow-up email. If you haven't received anything from us to come out individually to help provide a response for ACCOs or to that forum next week, then please just get in touch with me.
Amazing. Thanks, Jade. And your email address is up on the slides at the moment, jade.lane@absec.org.au as well for people.
Thanks. I still got Carolyn's up at the moment, so I didn't want to say that.
Oh, really? Okay. I think that might be your internet, Jade.
Yeah, it's mine. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. All right. Well, if we just fabulous. Thank you, all three, and really strongly encourage everyone to engage with their peaks. And just to recap, for us, our feedback mechanisms, if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide. So there's the link to the discussion paper if you haven't looked into it before. Submissions closing on the 17th of May. Ideally for us, feedback via the online form, but you can also email us or send us some old school post. I haven't actually received any post at our new address, so that could be very exciting. Obviously, you're all here for this recording, but your colleagues may not be, or you might have other people who would like to look at it, or you may want to watch it again because it was just so compelling and amazingly delivered. That will be available by tomorrow. We are hoping, all things going well with our web and digital team. So thank you so much. We're at time. That was almost deliberately timed. And as I said at the start, I'm just so grateful for this sector in DCJ and across the sector for the brilliant work you do every day with families and for the energy and ambition that you lean into the reforms. We do want to make this a collective vision and collective agenda. So please, I know it can be hard, and it can be hard when people are getting the winter lurgy to find the time to respond to these sorts of things, but it is really important, and we will take that feedback very, very seriously. So thank you again, and we'll hear from you very soon. Thanks, and have a lovely rest of the week. See you later.